Regenerative practices versus tillage monoculture. Here's some words that are hard to know the meaning of. Do you know the word tillage? Okay, this means to plow the soil, to till the soil. Yeah, tillage. This is till the soil, right? It's plowed soil. Monoculture. Do you know the word monoculture? Right, one kind of thing is growing there. If you grow one thing versus a regenerative practice where it looks like these people, they grew maybe oats or wheat here, and then they harvested the oats, and then they left the stalks on the ground, and then they planted, I think, must be soybeans here. So then you have all the dead plant residue protecting the ground from growing weeds, and then you have something growing together. This is a regenerative practice. When you use this practice, more and more carbon is going into the ground. More carbon into the ground means more organic matter, and that goes back to this idea. When you till the ground, there are these large organic molecules in the ground, and they're broken into pieces. The bacteria in the ground, when there's so much air. When you plow the ground, air comes in there. And the bacteria that are living in the ground, they grow like this, but if much air comes in, they grow a lot. Then they break apart the organic matter because they're eating it, and they release lots of nutrients right away. So then young plants can eat the nutrients right away, but then over the long period of time, later in the season, you might have to add more manure again. And also, when they are breaking apart the carbon, the large carbon molecules, carbon dioxide goes back into the air. So you lose ability for the soil to hold nutrients over time. Also, with people being concerned about climate change, we want to try to keep as much carbon in the ground and not in the air as possible. Also, this, because it's all exposed soil, a lot of water evaporates into the air, especially if you're living in an area that is dry for part of the year. You want to protect that water and keep it in the soil. Where here the soil is covered and the water is not escaping. So tilling, plowing, cultivation, this is all the same meaning, but different people use different words. There are the strong points. It allows us to create a monoculture. We can plant all corn, we can plant all soybeans, we can plant all cassava. It's easy, it's convenient. All the weeds are gone, it's clean, right? The soil feels powdery and soft when you first plow it. It feels nice. And then in the air, there's air in the soil, so it's puffy, it's nice feeling. And then the soil nutrients, mineralized, means they come and become available for the plant to eat right away. So this is the good side of what's convenient about plowing. Now this is a little bit of the problem with plowing. We can create a monoculture, one thing growing, easily. But an ecosystem needs biodiversity. It needs many different living things. So it changes the ecosystem so that the diverse living things in the soil become much less diverse. The land becomes vulnerable to erosion. Do you guys know the word erosion? Yes. All right. You've seen this before, right? You plow the soil, it rains, your soil's gone. No, my soil's gone. That's terrible. I think, honestly, erosion is one of the biggest environmental challenges that is faced in the world, especially by developing nations. Because in developing nations, we're so dependent upon agriculture as our livelihood. The soil, naturally, if you let it stay there and you cover it, it makes a structure within itself of the wormholes and the other bacteria and other microorganisms moving around in the soil. If you break that structure, then again, the things which are living in the soil have to make the structure again. So that is a problem for the living things in the soil that are there. And then over long term, if you plow every year, the soil becomes compacted. So the top is soft, but then there's a layer below that which becomes very hard. Then the water cannot penetrate very easily. And then the soil carbon. The soil carbon, which is holding the nutrients and minerals, it starts to decrease and go away over time. This is this field up here a few years ago when I was growing garlics here. On one hand, it was really good because there was no weeds. On the other hand, my students were 14 years old and were not paying attention, so they planted the garlics very far away, and they just missed some areas. So sometimes if you use 14-year-olds to plant your crops, it's not so great. But the soil became very healthy. So I did not till this. It was this tall in weeds. Oh, I have to till. What else am I going to do? I cut the plants down. Then I took the paper from the chicken farm, which is from the feed sacks, and I put it on the ground. Then I took the dead plants and I put it on top of the paper. Then I waited until the dead plants, you know when you first cut a plant, it's green and it's kind of like this. I waited until the dead plants wilted and became brown. And then I just took the little hand tool and then put the garlic in, like this. And then I had no weeds, and all the garlics were in the ground. And then I came through, I weeded just a little bit, but there was almost no weed growth there. After having this, I mean, it was tall. It was like some of you have done the weed whacking. It was the same as that when I started. So this was a really good method for me. So the soil structure of what's living, all these little tunnels in the soil, all these little air pockets that were there naturally, were not destroyed. And then the mulch made the weeds not come up. I planted right into that surface, which was mulched, and then the soil was never uncovered to the sun or to anything else. The sun also, the sunlight shining on the bare soil, it's taking out the water, and it's also taking out the carbon. So we don't want that. So here's the idea of no-till farming. If you till, this part is soft, so the seed, it puts its roots down, but it cannot overcome this area called the plow pan. Especially if you use a heavy thing like a tractor to plow, there becomes a very hard layer right here. I can even feel it in the rice field. There's this much mud, and then it's hard. It's just hard mud down there. And so even here, if I'm digging, I can dig, and then at a certain point, I get to the point where the tractor had compressed. So then the roots cannot go deeply, and the water cannot also penetrate deeply. So a few years ago, 2020, I had plowed a field up here, and I had planted peppers. But because I plowed, there was a layer of impenetrable soil about this far under the soil. And then it rained really hard, and the rain it rained without stopping for 60 days. And the rain could not go into the soil. And all of my peppers died. I planted 800 plants that year. I had beautiful peppers coming on, and they all died. I got depressed, actually. It was so frustrating to me. This is because of improper plowing. But if for a long time you do not till the soil, the roots which were in the soil, they go down, then the plant dies, the root decomposes, and there becomes a space there in the soil which is going down. Then the water, when it falls on the soil, it can go down. The worms are coming through the soil. There's a space. It can follow that worm trail down. So then the soil it's not as soft as when it's plowed, but it becomes soft deeper. And that makes the soil be able to breathe with air and water. So then you plant a seed, and that seed's roots can come down deeply. That means it can get nutrients and water which are much deeper into the soil.